Let me say something right out the gate that might rub some people the wrong way, and I'm okay with that. If a man doesn't value you, it is not because you haven't done enough. It is not because you haven't been patient enough, sweet enough, understanding enough, or available enough. The reason a man doesn't value you has nothing to do with how hard you've tried. And the moment you understand that, really understand it, everything changes. Because the truth is, you cannot earn value from a man who was never prepared to give it. But you absolutely can position yourself in a way that makes a man who is capable of real love see you clearly, appreciate you deeply, and choose you not out of obligation, not out of loneliness, but because you have genuinely become someone he cannot imagine his life without. And that's exactly what we're breaking down today. Welcome to Love Psychology Secrets. It lets me know we're on the right track together. Now let's get into it. Here's the thing most people get completely wrong about this topic. When women come to me and say, Steven, how do I make him value me? The assumption buried in that question is that value is something you manufacture through strategy. Like if you wait 3 days before texting back, or if you play a little hot and cold, or if you act indifferent long enough, he'll suddenly wake up and realize what he has. And I get why that thinking is out there. Dating culture has trained people, especially women, to treat love like a chess game. Make the right moves, withhold the right emotions, and eventually you'll win. But here's what nobody's telling you. Games might create temporary intrigue, but they never create lasting respect. And what we're talking about today is not temporary intrigue. We're talking about the kind of value that makes a man stay up at night thinking about you, not because you confuse them, but because you genuinely move them. So let me be very clear about something before we go any further. Love and relationship are not the same thing. I want you to hold on to that for the rest of this video. A man can love you and still not give you a healthy relationship. He can be drawn to you, fascinated by you, even emotionally attached to you, and still treat you like you're optional. That's not the goal. The goal is not just to be loved. The goal is to be valued, which means respected, considered, pursued, and protected within the context of a real, consistent, intentional relationship. And those are two very different things. Keep that distinction in your mind as we go. Now let's start with the first angle, because this is where most women unknowingly make their biggest mistake. The mistake is this: they confuse availability with value. And I understand it completely. When you like someone, when you feel something real for them, your instinct is to show up, to be there, to make yourself accessible because you want them to know you're interested, you're serious, you're not playing around. And that's actually a beautiful instinct. It comes from a genuine place. But here's where it breaks down. Availability without selectivity signals to a man's subconscious that being with you requires very little effort on his part. And human psychology, men and women both, does not deeply treasure what came easily. That is not a game. That is not manipulation. That is just how the brain is wired. We assign value based on what something costs us in time, in energy, in attention. Think about it like this. You know how in fitness, nobody respects a personal record they set on a day they barely tried? But the record they broke after months of grinding, after they wanted to quit, after they pushed through every obstacle, that one means everything to them. Same principle applies here. When a man has to show up consistently, when he has to actually invest his time and attention and thought into being with you, you become that record he's proud of. You become the result of his best effort. And men do not abandon what they worked hard for. So the practical shift here is not about being cold or unavailable. It's about being selective. It's about having a life that is genuinely full enough that you are not waiting around. It's about having standards for how you spend your time and who you spend it with. When you are that woman, the one who has her own things going on, her own joy, her own sense of direction, you become naturally compelling. You are not performing scarcity. You actually are rare because most people are not living that intentionally. I was talking to a woman not too long ago who was in a situation where she dropped everything whenever this guy called. And she said to me, Steven, I just wanted him to know I was all in. And I told her, that's beautiful, but he already knows you're all in. What he doesn't know yet is what it will cost him to keep you. Give him something to rise to, not because you're playing games, but because you know your own worth. That was the shift. She stopped being constantly available, not out of spite, but because she started filling her own life back up. Within weeks, the dynamic had completely changed. He was pursuing, he was planning, He was present because she stopped making it easy to take her for granted. Now, here's where it gets interesting because we need to talk about the difference between value and approval seeking. And this one cuts deep. A lot of women, and I say this with full compassion, have learned somewhere along the way that their job in a relationship is to be pleasing, to not ask for too much, to soften their needs, shrink their expectations, and be grateful for whatever they get. And I understand where that comes from. Sometimes it's upbringing, sometimes it's past heartbreak, sometimes it's past heartbreak, sometimes it's the cultural message that a woman who asks for too much is difficult or demanding. But listen to me very carefully. A man who cannot handle a woman with standards was never equipped to love her correctly in the first place. That's not your problem to manage. That is his limitation. When you are constantly seeking approval, checking his tone, adjusting your mood based on his energy, changing how you dress, what you say, how much you laugh, how much you share, you are handing him the remote control to your emotional state. And what does that communicate? It communicates that your sense of self is dependent on his validation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Men are not attracted to women who need their approval to feel okay. They are deeply drawn to women who are okay, fully, genuinely okay, whether the man shows up or not. That groundedness, that self-possession, that quiet confidence, that is magnetic in a way that no game-playing strategy will ever replicate. Think about it like this. Imagine you at a restaurant and there's one waiter who's running around constantly asking every table if everything is okay, interrupting conversations, clearly anxious about whether anyone is happy. And then there's another waiter who moves with calm confidence, shows up exactly when you need something, doesn't hover, doesn't panic, but makes you feel taken care of without even trying that hard. Which one do you trust more? Which experience did you enjoy more? The second one every time, because calm confidence signals competence. Calm confidence signals self-assurance. And that is exactly what men experience around a woman who doesn't need their approval to feel secure. So the mindset shift here is this: stop managing his feelings and start honoring your own. That doesn't mean you stop being caring or warm or emotionally open. It means you stop editing yourself for his comfort. It means your standards don't change based on how much you like him. All right, let's talk about the third angle. And this one is something I don't hear enough people discussing, honestly. We need to talk about emotional availability versus emotional desperation, because there is a very fine line between the two, and most people don't even realize which side they're on. Emotional availability is being open, being warm, being willing to share yourself and receive someone else in a genuine way. It is one of the most beautiful qualities a person can have in love. But emotional desperation is when your openness comes with an agenda. When you're sharing yourself not because it feels right and natural, but because you're trying to secure a specific response from him. When every vulnerable moment is actually a test to see if he'll stay. When every kind gesture comes with a silent expectation you haven't voiced. That energy, and I promise you, men feel it, creates pressure. Not because they don't care, but because it signals that being with you comes with a cost he didn't sign up for. I was coaching a client, let's call her Priya, who kept asking her boyfriend to reassure her constantly. Do you still like me? Are we okay? You seem distant. What's wrong? And her boyfriend was not a bad person. He wasn't emotionally unavailable. But he told her something that stuck with me. I feel like nothing I do is ever enough. That's not a man escaping love. That's a man exhausted by anxiety. And Priya's anxiety wasn't about him. It was about her own unresolved fear of abandonment. The moment she started working on that, the relationship changed completely because she stopped putting the weight of her emotional security on his shoulders. And that freed both of them. So the practical takeaway here is to ask yourself honestly, when I show up in this relationship, am I being open or am I being needy, dressed up as open? And look, there is no judgment in that question. We have all been there, but the answer changes everything because emotional availability is a gift you offer. Emotional desperation is a demand you disguise. Now let's shift to something that is absolutely foundational and yet almost nobody talks about it properly: communication. Most dating advice tells you to be mysterious. Don't say too much. Keep him guessing. Let him wonder about you. And while I understand the thinking behind that, there's a version of it that isn't entirely wrong. The extreme version of that advice creates silence where there should be clarity. And silence is not the same as mystery. Mystery is being interesting. Silence is being unavailable, and they are not the same thing. Here's what actually creates value in communication. Being direct without being demanding. Being honest without being overwhelming. Being clear about what you want without making every conversation a negotiation. I'll give you a real world analogy. Think about a business deal. The most respected negotiators in the room are not the ones who are impossible to read, who never reveal their position, who keep the other side perpetually confused. The most respected negotiators are the ones who know exactly what they want, communicate with calm clarity, and don't panic if the other side needs a moment to respond. They are confident in their position without being aggressive about it. That is exactly what directness in a relationship looks like. When you know what you want and you can say it clearly, calmly, and without apology, you become someone a man can respect because he knows exactly where he stands with you. And that kind of clarity is incredibly rare. Most people are dancing around what they actually want, hoping the other person will guess. Don't do that. Say it. Not with ultimatums, not with tears of frustration, with calm, quiet confidence. The shift here is simple but powerful. Stop hinting and start communicating. If you need more quality time, say that. If you feel disconnected, name it. If something he did bothered you, speak on it directly, kindly, and without a 20-minute buildup of resentment. Men do not read between the lines as often as we'd like them to. And asking them to is setting both of you up to fail. But wait, there's another side to this, and it's the counterintuitive part that I really want you to sit with. Most women think that making a man value them is about what they do or don't do, what they say or don't say, how they behave or don't behave. And yes, all of that matters to some degree, but the deepest truth, the thing underneath all of this, is that genuine value comes from who you are, not from how you perform. And this is where so much dating advice fails people, because it treats attraction and love like a performance you can optimize. But real love, the kind that sticks, the kind that grows, that is not a response to a performance, that is a response to a person. Think about the most magnetic people you've ever met in your life. The ones who just walk into a room and command attention without trying. The ones whose friendships people fight for, whose opinions people respect, whose presence people crave. Are they doing tricks? Are they playing games? No, they have simply become. They have done the inner work of knowing who they are, what they stand for, what they love, what they won't tolerate, and that wholeness radiates outward in a way that cannot be faked and cannot be manufactured. That is the ultimate answer to how you make a man value you. You become someone worth valuing. Now, I know that sounds abstract, so let me make it practical. Becoming someone worth valuing means actively building yourself, not for him, but for you. It means pursuing the career you actually want, investing in friendships that feed your soul, doing the healing work on your past wounds so they don't run your present choices, having opinions, having passions, having a sense of humor and a sense of purpose and a sense of direction that is yours, that existed before him and will continue to exist whether or not he stays. When a man encounters a woman like that, he does not think, I should take it easy with her. He thinks, I don't want to lose this. Let me put it another way. There is a huge difference between a woman who is attractive because of how she presents herself and a woman who is compelling because of who she actually is. Presentation gets attention, character keeps it, and what we're going for here is not just his attention, it's his respect, his admiration, his consistent effort. And those things are reserved for women of genuine depth. So let's talk about the fifth and final angle, and this one ties everything together in a way that I think is going to hit differently. We need to talk about standards, not as a wall you put up to keep people out, but as a reflection of what you genuinely believe you deserve. Because here's what I've noticed working with people through relationship struggles over the years. The women who struggle most to be valued by the men they're with are often the women who haven't fully decided in their own hearts that they deserve to be valued. And that is heartbreaking, but it's fixable. Your standards are not a checklist you carry around to reject people with. Your standards are an internal compass. They are the invisible agreement you've made with yourself about how you will be treated and what you will accept. When those standards are vague, when you've never really sat down and decided what you actually need to feel safe, respected, and loved, you will default to accepting whatever someone offers you. And whatever someone offers is not always what you need. Sometimes it's the bare minimum presented with enough charm that it feels like more than it is. Your standards protect you from that. Think about it like this. Imagine you're shopping for a home. If you walk into a real estate showing with no clarity on what you need, square footage, neighborhood, price range, you are vulnerable to a smooth talking agent selling you something that looks good in the moment, but falls apart the moment you actually try to live in it. But if you walk in knowing exactly what you need and what you won't compromise on, you are not rude, you're not difficult, you're just clear. And that clarity saves you from years of living in the wrong house. Love works the same way. Knowing what you need and being willing to walk away from what doesn't meet that, that is not playing games, that is self-respect made visible. And here's the counterintuitive part. A man who is genuinely interested in you will not be scared away by your standards. He will rise to meet them. Because the right man for you doesn't want a woman who will accept anything. He wants a woman who knows her worth. Because that tells him something important. It tells him that when she chooses him, she chose him. Not because she was desperate, not because he was available, not because she settled, but because he actually earned it. And that distinction matters deeply to a man who is serious about love. I need to be honest with you about something else though, because this conversation would be incomplete without it. Some of you watching this are in situations where you have been doing everything right. You have your own life. You are emotionally grounded. You communicate clearly. You have real standards, and he still doesn't seem to fully value you. And if that's where you are, I want to say this as gently and as directly as I can. His inability to value you is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of his readiness. Some men are simply not in a place emotionally, psychologically, spiritually to receive what a high value woman offers. They haven't done the work. They haven't healed. They haven't grown into the version of themselves that is capable of showing up the way you need. And you cannot love that into them. You cannot wait that into them. You cannot be patient enough or understanding enough to grow a man who is unwilling to grow himself. The hardest truth in love is that the right person sometimes arrives in the wrong package, meaning someone who has the capacity to love you, but hasn't yet developed the character to love you the way you need. And what you do with that information is your choice. But I want you to make that choice with clear eyes, not hope that blinds you, not fear of starting over, clear eyes. Let's also talk about something that rarely gets addressed in these conversations, the role that a man's ego plays in all of this. Because understanding male psychology, really understanding it, gives you a perspective that changes how you interpret his behavior. Most men tie their sense of worth to their ability to provide, protect, and succeed. That's not toxic masculinity. That's a deeply ingrained psychological pattern that shows up across cultures and generations. And when a man is around a woman who challenges him, not in a combative way, but in a way that holds him to a higher standard, that inspires him to be more, that doesn't settle for less than his best, something activates in him. He wants to step up. He wants to be the man she deserves, because being chosen by a woman who doesn't choose just anyone, that is deeply meaningful to a man who has any kind of emotional intelligence at all. But when a man is around a woman who has no standards, who will accept whatever he gives, who adjusts herself to fit what he seems to want, there's no inspiration there. There's no challenge. And without challenge, there is no growth. And without growth, there is no investment. And without investment, there is no value. That is the complete psychological circuit. And it's why what you're willing to accept directly shapes what he's willing to give. Now, I want to address something before we wrap up, because I know there are people watching this who are thinking, but Steven, isn't all of this just strategy? Isn't it still manipulation? And I want to answer that honestly. No. Here's the difference. Strategy is calculated. It's performed. It's designed to create a reaction. What I've been talking about today is none of that. Everything I've described today is about becoming and being someone who has a full life, being someone who communicates directly, being someone whose standards are genuinely their own, being someone who is not seeking approval. None of that is performance. All of that is development. All of that is growth. And the byproduct of that growth is that men of substance are drawn to you, not because you tricked them, but because you became exactly the kind of person that a person worth loving falls in love with. So let me bring this home with the practical summary, because I want you to leave this video with something you can actually use. First, stop confusing constant availability with showing value. Fill your life with purpose, passion, and people who light you up, not to make him jealous, but because a full life is a beautiful life. Second, stop seeking his approval to feel okay about yourself. Your standards, your emotions, your self-worth are not up for his review. Ground yourself in who you are, independent of his response. Third, check whether your emotional openness is genuine or whether it's hiding desperation. Be open because it's real, not because you're hoping it will secure a certain outcome. Fourth, communicate directly and without apology. Say what you need, name what bothers you, express what you want with calm, with clarity, and with confidence. And fifth, and I cannot stress this enough, do the inner work. Because the deepest, most lasting version of being valued by a man is simply this: becoming someone who genuinely values herself. Not in theory, in practice. In the decisions you make, the behavior you accept, the way you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. That internal standard becomes the external standard. And the right man, the one who is ready for something real, will recognize it. He won't be threatened by it. He will be moved by it. And that is the difference between a relationship built on games and a relationship built on something that actually lasts. If this video spoke to something you've been navigating, if any of it cracked something open for you, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you are in your journey. Ask the question you've been afraid to ask. This community is a real one, and your experience matters here. And if you haven't subscribed yet to Love Psychology Secrets, right now is a perfect time. We go deep on all of this every week because you deserve more than surface level answers to the most important questions in your life. I'm Steven. Take everything you learned today and go be exactly who you are, without apology, without games, and without settling for anything less than what you truly deserve. I'll see you in the next one.